Hello and welcome to today's vlog. As always, thank you for joining me. Now I've got something to show you today, and it's something that we've just recently unpacked, and here it is. If you can see that, a bit of reflection, that's better. So it's a piece of art, and you might think, well, there's nothing particularly special about that. It's obviously a rose. Surrounded by some vegetation. Well, in one sense that's true, but what is special about it is that rose consists of, there's a book in the Bible called the Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. It was, the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew, as you probably know, and that rose is made up of the Hebrew words that make up the book in the Bible in the Old Testament called the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon. Some people think it was written by Solomon himself. So we bought that some years ago, well, quite a lot of years ago actually, when we were in Israel, and had it framed, and it's a beautiful reminder of that rather strange in some ways book in the Bible. So we have that now hanging in our bedroom, because the Song of Solomon is it's a love poem, and it's a story of a relationship between a man and a woman, sometimes called the bride and the bridegroom, a couple who are very much in love with each other. It's a love between Solomon and his bride, his beloved, and it's actually quite risque in one sense if you read through it, and it really is a celebration of love and of sexual love too, and it's a reminder that that sexual expression of love is part of God's creation, how he created us to be in the terms of the Song of Songs in the Bible. It's within a married, committed, lifelong, faithful relationship. So it's also seen as an illustration of God's love for his people. And in the New Testament, the relationship between Jesus and his church is seen in that same love relationship. So that's it's a wonderful and it kind of stands out in some ways as a book in the Bible, but it's as most of the Bible books, in fact all the books in the Bible, are in some way expressing God's love for his people, his creation. Now I've got something else to show you, if I can find it. This is a Bible that I was given when I became a fully accredited or fully authorised, fully trained or whatever local preacher within the Methodist Church, or a lay preacher. And this is dated September 1985. So that's a few years ago, and 1985. So ever since that time, and in fact before, during my training, I've been preaching fairly regularly, especially the last 30 years. As a minister, I was preaching at least once, sometimes 2 or 3 times every Sunday. But of course, when the pandemic hit and the lockdown began, church services were brought to a halt, at least those where you were physically present. So really, since the first lockdown began, I haven't preached a sermon as such. I've shared some online services and some devotional things, but not really what you might call a sermon or a message. So I was looking forward last Sunday to preaching in one of our local churches here in Doncaster. I've been asked to take the service, or at least to preach, and I was looking forward to that. However, as the second lockdown began, we couldn't actually go to that church building, so what I did was to record the message on and then send it, so that they had an online service, a virtual service. And so Sue and I sat and watched the service, enjoyed that, but listening to myself preach was a bit weird. But there you go. This particular church have sermon series, or they set the text, the Bible passage for the day or for the service quite a long way ahead. So the passage I had been asked to preach on was from John chapter 13, and I focused on 2 verses in John 13. Let me read them to you. It's John 13, and here's the 2 verses I focused on. This is Jesus' words to his disciples right at the end of the Last Supper. A new command I give to you: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. So Jesus is saying that the sign, the evidence, if you like, that someone is a disciple of his is the love that person shows to others. And in the sermon, I asked the question, how could Jesus say it was a new command to love each other when he'd already spoken about loving others in the Gospels earlier on? He says, for example, that we're even to love our enemies. And so how is it then that Jesus says this is a new command? Well, perhaps it's new in the sense of the depth of its challenge. Love one another, says Jesus, as I have loved you. We know that Jesus loved us so much that he gave his life for us. Are we willing to offer that same self-sacrificing love? So it's the depth, the quality of love that Jesus is looking at here. So the second question that I asked in the sermon is, how can Jesus say a new command I give to you? How can love be commanded? And if we go back to this Song of Solomon book, it's all about really romantic love, or a lot of it is at heart, that romance between a man and a woman. And the problem is that when Jesus is talking about love one another, he's not talking really about that kind of fuzzy feeling that we have, or it's really not about a feeling, it's about an action. When a couple get married, my nephew Michael has just got married in New Zealand to Amanda, his new wife. We couldn't obviously be there, but we pray God's blessing upon them. But often when a couple get married, they're sustained at that time by that feeling of being in love. But of course, as you go through the years, that feeling may come and go. Some mornings you might wake up and you don't feel that you're in love with your husband or your wife. But love here is about how we act towards them. So it can be commanded because love is an active word. I mentioned in a previous vlog about Bob Goff's book, Love Does, in which he makes the point that love is an active word. It does. It reaches out. It's not just a feeling in our hearts or whatever, but it's an action. Listen to what C.S. Lewis, one of my favourite authors, said in his book, Mere Christianity. Do not waste your time bothering whether you love your neighbour. Act as if you did. As soon as we do this, we find one of the great secrets. When you are behaving as if you love someone, you'll presently come to love them. If you injure someone you dislike, you will find yourself disliking them more. If you do someone a good turn, you will find yourself disliking them less. So never let our emotions drive our actions. Rather, let our actions shape our emotions. So there's a challenge for us. Are we known by the love that we have for others, for God? Remember 2 great commandments, said Jesus. Firstly, to love God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. And then secondly, to love others as you love yourself. So we receive that love of God into our hearts, and then we're called to give it away. So there's the challenge from the lips of Jesus. Yes, that Song of Songs reminds us there's that romantic love, that sexual expression in a loving, faithful, married relationship is part of God's creation. But at heart, love is about how we act towards people, how we speak of them and to them. So when God looks at our life, when our friends, our family, our neighbours, our work colleagues look at our lives, do they see there the love of God, that self-giving love? That's a challenge for us all. So thanks so much for listening. May God bless you and fill you afresh with his love today.